The rule of 7% is used by coaches all over the world to figure out when a session should come to an end. The athlete's either overtraining, at risk of an injury, they're too tired. Basically, it's a case of using the stopwatch to tell you what you don't know yourself sometimes. We always say to people, listen to your body, and you, as the boxer's coach, will be able to coach them far better than I would because you know that boxer. I don't know them. But there are some times when people will pull the wool over your eyes, or they won't be trying as hard as they should, and sometimes only empirical data is going to give us the answer to that. In this case, that empirical data comes from the stopwatch. You can't cheat time. Once the warm-up is completed, you've probably got, let's say the athlete is going to be running 60 meters. For example, 8 times 60 meters at 95%. Once the warm-up is completed, the athlete, I refer to them as athlete when they're on the track, but the athlete or the boxer is going to be warmed up thoroughly, and then they're going to commence their 8 times 60 meters. When they commence this 8 times 60 meters, you've probably got some data on how quickly they normally cover that distance. To give you a vague idea, anything outside of 11 seconds would be awful. Anything under 10 seconds would be okay. Under 9 seconds, they're running quite quickly. Under 8 seconds, you've got somebody fast there. If you have someone under 7 seconds, either A, your timing's wrong, or B, they're in the wrong sport and they should actually be sprinting, not boxing. If they're that quick that they run under 7 seconds, they are blindingly quick. So the stopwatch is going to give us this information. So you're going to know, let's say, for example, your boxer runs the 60 meters in 10 flat. We'll call it 10 seconds. That's relatively quick, that's okay. So they're running that in 10 seconds. So their first run comes in at 11.5 seconds and you think, hang on a minute, that's not right. They are way out here. They're 15% out, in fact. Now, if they are more than 15% out on their first run, this tells you the warm-up has not been sufficient. That's what it's going to tell you. So we're not just using a rule of 7%. The 15%, firstly, is going to tell you if they have completed their warm-up correctly. If they take 15% longer than their normal sprint time for that distance, they've not done a good enough warm-up. Look at the warm-up and fix that problem first. Once they've done it, they're then going to commence the sprint. So the first sprint is generally not the fastest. Normally you will find your second or third sprint should be the fastest. If it's sprint number 7 or 8, again, it probably means that the warm-up hasn't been sufficient, or they haven't been putting sufficient effort and energy into it. We should ideally, once they've got past the first one or two runs, they should generally be pretty consistent. Except, let's say for example, someone is running at 10 seconds for 60 meters. Now 7% of 10 seconds is 0.7 of a second. 0.7 of a second. That would be 7% of their overall time. So you can calculate the time. So if they begin running and they run 10.1, 10.2, 10.1, 10.2, 10.3, and then they begin to slow 10.6, when they reach 10.7, either A, they're not putting the effort in, or B, you need to stop them. If they are more than 7% slower than what they would normally be or what they are doing in that session, something's going wrong. And we've used this figure for many, many years. It's very, very effective. For someone running 7 seconds for 60 meters, it would be 7.49, 7 times 0.07. So it would be 7.49 seconds. I know that figure because that was the figure that I used to use going back 20, 30 years, because that figure was relevant to me because I used to run it in about 7 flat. For a 10-second runner, if they're running more than 10.7 seconds, you've got to stop them. Either A, they're overtrained, B, they're overtired, 3, they're fatigued, but this can lead to, guess what, injury. That's the big worry. If you get an injury when you're sprinting, because it's generally done at high speed, high power output, it can be catastrophic. You can put someone out for a while. So really what we want to do is to avoid injury. Now there's only one way you can tell this. The athlete can tell you, I don't feel well, I don't feel good, I'm dropping off, I feel tired, something like that. In that case, listen to them and pay attention to what they're saying. But sometimes they won't tell you, but the stopwatch will tell you always. So time them. It's really important. Use the rule, firstly, that if the warm-up is not good enough, if they're 15% off their time, but they're on in the actual runs that they do, run number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, use the 7% rule. Calculate the 7% after the first run. So, for example, I'm having a crap day and I'm running really badly and I run 11 seconds instead of 10 seconds. So what we could say is if I'm then going to run 11.77, it would be, call it 11.8. If I'm running outside and I'm having a bad day, just a bad day, the 7% rule would be taken from the 11 seconds, not my regular 10. So use that 7% rule in order to figure out when to stop them. Okay, so here's a worked example. Let's go back to our 200 meter runner who's able to run it in a very respectable 25 seconds. So then what we do is they've run 25 seconds for their first run, okay? Then what we do is we calculate the 7%, which is 1.75 seconds. We then add them together. 25 plus 1.75 equals 26.75. That is the target time that each and every run should be done underneath. And you need to tell that to them as well. A boxer who doesn't ask, what was my time, is not focused on the session and is not giving 100%. Use the times. It will tell you everything that they don't.